the screech of tires, a woman's scream, and in that split second, everything changed forever. Emma's hands instinctively went to her swollen belly as she stumbled into the Atlanta street. 6 months pregnant and running for her life, she didn't see the black Mercedes SUV until it was almost too late. The horn blared, her world went into slow motion. This is it, she thought. This is how it ends, not just for me, but for my baby. The vehicle swerved violently, tires smoking against the hot Georgia asphalt. It stopped just inches from her trembling body. Emma stood frozen in the middle of Peachtree Hills Drive, one hand clutching her pregnant stomach, the other holding a worn duffel bag that contained everything she owned in the world. Hello, friends. Welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? For a moment, there was only silence. Then the driver's door flew open. "What the hell is wrong with you?" The man who stepped out was tall, wearing an expensive tailored suit that probably cost more than Emma had earned in her entire life. His face was a mask of fury and shock. "Are you trying to kill yourself and that baby?" Emma couldn't speak. Her legs were shaking so badly she thought she might collapse right there on the pavement. Behind her, she could still hear him, Marcus, shouting her name from somewhere in the neighborhood. He was looking for her. He would find her, and when he did... I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The heat of the afternoon sun, the fear coursing through her veins, the exhaustion of running, it all crashed over her at once. Her knees buckled. The man rushed forward and caught her arm, steadying her. "Hey, easy now. You're safe. I've got you." But Emma didn't feel safe. She had left one monster and nearly been killed by a stranger's car. In a city like Atlanta where she knew no one and had nowhere to go, she was completely alone. She looked up at him, her eyes pleading. Would this wealthy stranger help her, or would he leave her here on this burning pavement with nowhere to run? The man, whose name she would soon learn was Michael Harrison, kept a firm but gentle hold on her arm. His initial rage had completely vanished, replaced by genuine worry. "You need to get out of this heat," he said, his voice steady and calm. "Come on, let me help you." Emma hesitated. Her mama back in rural Tennessee had warned her about big cities and strangers who seemed too kind. But she was 6 months pregnant, exhausted and terrified. She had no energy left to run, and nowhere to run to anyway. She gave a small, defeated nod. Michael picked up her duffel bag from the street and handed it to her. "My name is Michael," he said. "What's yours?" "Emma," she whispered. "Okay, Emma, let's get you inside where it's cool. We'll figure out what's going on." He led her through the massive iron gate of his estate. A security guard quickly opened it at the sight of Michael. They walked onto a property that looked like something out of a magazine. Perfectly manicured lawns, elegant stone pathways, and a modern mansion of white stone and floor-to-ceiling windows. Emma had never seen anything like it. She felt like a mud-stained bird that had accidentally flown into a palace. Michael led her through the front door into a living room that took her breath away. Cool air conditioning washed over her overheated skin. The floors were polished marble. The furniture was cream-colored leather. A massive flat-screen TV hung on the wall like a piece of art. Everything was clean, expensive, and beautiful, the complete opposite of the cramped, filthy apartment she'd been trapped in for the past 3 months. "Please, sit down," Michael said, gesturing to one of the plush couches. Emma perched on the very edge, her bag clutched in her lap. She felt small and out of place, afraid she might somehow dirty this beautiful room just by being in it. Michael disappeared for a moment and returned with a glass of ice water and a bottle of orange juice. "Here," he said, handing them both to her. "Drink. You look dehydrated." She took the water with trembling hands and drank gratefully, the cool liquid soothing her parched throat. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice a little stronger now. "Michael," he corrected gently. "You can call me Michael."
He sat in an armchair across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. His expression was serious but kind. "Now, Emma, can you tell me what happened out there? Who were you running from?" Emma's hand went protectively to her swollen belly. The baby kicked, as if reminding her that she wasn't just making decisions for herself anymore. She looked at this stranger who almost hit her with his car, but now offering her water and shelter. Could she trust him? Did she have any choice? She took a deep breath and began to tell her story. But she had no idea that walking into this man's home would change not just her life, but the lives of everyone in this house. The war between two brothers was about to begin, and Emma was about to become the most valuable prize in a battle she never asked to be a part of.
Emma took a sip of the orange juice, gathering her courage. Her baby kicked again, stronger this time, and she placed her hand over the movement. Michael waited patiently, his eyes kind but concerned. "I came to Atlanta 3 months ago," Emma began, her voice soft. "I'm from a small town in Tennessee, Coopersville. Population maybe 2,000. I'd never even been to a big city before." She paused, the shame of what came next making her cheeks burn. "My friend, Katie, we grew up together. She moved here last year. She called me and said her cousin had a restaurant and needed a waitress. The pay was good, she said. I could stay with her until I got on my feet." Michael listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. "I could work at a diner back home, barely making minimum wage. My mama was sick, needed medicine we couldn't afford. So I took every penny I'd saved, $300, and bought a bus ticket to Atlanta." Emma's voice cracked. "Katie met me at the station, but she didn't take me to her apartment. She took me to this man's place, Marcus. She said he was her cousin's business partner, that I'd be staying there until I started work." She didn't need to say more. Marcus's jaw tightened, and she could see he understood. "Katie left that first night," Emma continued, tears threatening to spill over again. "Said she was going to grab us dinner. She never came back. I tried calling her. She blocked my number. Marcus told me she'd gotten what she wanted, a finder's fee, he called it." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained calm. "What did he want from you?" "At first, he said I could work for him, clean his apartment, cook his meals, said he'd pay me cash, but then—" Emma's hand went to her belly again. "I was already pregnant when I came here, 2 months along. I didn't know it yet, but Marcus figured it out before I did. He said a pregnant girl with no money, no family, no one looking for her, that I should be grateful he was willing to keep me around." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He said he owed me for the roof over my head." The words hung heavy in the air. "I stayed because I was scared. I had nowhere to go, no money left. I didn't know anyone in Atlanta except Katie, and she'd sold me out. I thought maybe if I just did what he wanted, kept my head down, I could survive until the baby came. Then maybe I could figure something out." "What changed?" Michael asked gently. "What made you run today?" Emma's hands trembled as she set down the orange juice bottle. "This morning, he came into my room. He'd been drinking. He said he was tired of waiting, that it was time I paid my debt properly." She looked Michael straight in the eye. "He grabbed me. I pushed him away and he fell, hit his head on the coffee table. It gave me maybe 30 seconds. I grabbed my bag and ran. I didn't even have shoes. They were by the door and I couldn't risk going back. I just ran." She gestured to her bare feet, now dusty and scratched. "I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from him. For me and for my baby." Michael sat back, running a hand over his face. He looked tired and sad.
and angry all at once. "I'm so sorry, Emma," he said finally. "No one should have to go through that. Your friend," he said the word with disgust, "has a lot to answer for." Emma just nodded, looking down at her hands. "Where's the baby's father?" Michael asked carefully. "I don't know," Emma answered honestly. "He was a truck driver passing through Coopersville. We dated for about 2 months. He seemed nice, talked about settling down. Then one day he just didn't come back, blocked my number too. I found out I was pregnant a week later." She gave a bitter little laugh. "My mama said I had terrible taste in people. Guess I was right." Michael stood up and began pacing the room. Emma watched him nervously. Would he ask her to leave? Call the police? She was technically homeless, trespassing in Marcus's apartment without paying rent. Could she get in trouble for that? Finally, Michael stopped and turned to face her. "Emma, I want you to listen to me carefully," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You can stay here, in this house. I have a guest room. It's yours for as long as you need it. You'll be safe here. No one will hurt you or your baby." Emma's eyes widened. "But sir, Michael, I'm a complete stranger. You don't know me. I could be lying. Are you lying?" "No." "Then that's all I need to know." He sat back down across from her. "Look, I'm not going to pretend I understand everything you've been through, but I know what it's like to feel powerless, to feel like you're drowning and no one's throwing a rope." He leaned forward. "You're not a stranger anymore, Emma. You're someone who needs help, and I'm in a position to help, so that's what I'm going to do. But no buts," he said with a small smile. "You're staying. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the next steps. Maybe get you to a doctor, make sure the baby's all right after all that running and stress. Then we'll talk about finding you a proper job, getting you on your feet." Tears flowed freely down Emma's face now, but they were different tears. Tears of relief, of hope, of disbelief that this was actually happening. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," Michael said. "Just focus on taking care of yourself and that baby. That's all the thanks I need." Emma felt a weight lift from her chest for the first time in months. She was safe. She and her baby were actually safe. But as Michael showed her up the stairs to the guest room, neither of them heard the front door open downstairs. Neither of them saw the younger man who walked in, took one look at the pregnant stranger in his brother's house, and felt his blood begin to boil. The storm that was Ryan Harrison was about to make his entrance, and peace was about to be shattered.
Michael led Emma up a sweeping staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and quiet, with elegant artwork on the walls and thick carpet that felt like clouds under Emma's sore feet. "This is the guest room," Michael said, opening a door at the end of the hall. "It has its own bathroom, so you'll have complete privacy." Emma stepped inside, and her breath caught. The room was beautiful. A large bed with a fluffy white comforter, a window overlooking the manicured garden, a small desk and chair, and a door that led to a pristine private bathroom. "There are towels, soap, everything you need in the bathroom," Michael explained. "Please, make yourself at home. Rest. I'll call you when dinner is ready." After he left, Emma stood in the middle of the room for a long moment, just taking it all in. She walked to the bed and touched the comforter. It was softer than anything she'd ever felt. She went into the bathroom and saw neat rows of toiletries, fluffy towels, and a shower that looked like it belonged in a spa. For the first time since arriving in Atlanta, she felt safe enough to breathe. She took a long, hot shower, washing away the grime and fear of the past months. When she got out, she put on the one clean maternity dress she had in her bag, a simple blue cotton dress her mama had made for her before she left Tennessee, and sat on the edge of the bed.
She placed both hands on her belly. "We're gonna be okay, little one. I promise, we're gonna be okay." A little while later, she heard raised voices downstairs. Curiosity and concern made her open her door just a crack to listen. "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this." The voice was younger than Michael's, with a sharp edge to it. "It's my share of the inheritance. I should be able to do whatever I want with it." "It's not about you," Michael was strained, trying to stay patient. "That commercial property has been in our family for 20 years. Dad built that business from nothing. You can't just sell it to some developer so you can buy another sports car." "It's called an investment, Michael. Maybe if you weren't so stuck in the past, you'd see the opportunity. That property is worth triple what Dad paid for it. I could take that money and actually do something with it." "You mean waste it, like you wasted the $50,000 on that crypto scheme, or the 30 grand you lost in Vegas last month?" The argument escalated, voices rising. Emma's heart sank. She'd heard these same kinds of fights back home between her uncles after her grandfather died. Money and inheritance had a way of tearing families apart. She quietly closed her door, not wanting to eavesdrop further. The peace she'd felt just moments ago was already being replaced by a familiar unease. Later, there was a gentle knock on her door. "Emma, dinner's ready," Michael called. She followed him downstairs to find the dining table set for 3. A young man was lounging on the living room couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as they entered, and his eyes immediately went to Emma's pregnant belly before traveling up to her face. He was handsome, probably in his late 20s, with styled dark hair, expensive designer clothes, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. But there was something guarded in his eyes, something that made Emma uncomfortable. "This is Emma," Michael said, calmly. "She'll be staying with us for a while. Emma, this is my younger brother, Ryan." Emma gave a small, polite nod. "Nice to meet you," she said softly. Ryan didn't return the greeting. He just stared at her, his expression unreadable, then made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scoff before going back to his phone. Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She'd felt so clean after her shower, so much better than she had in weeks, but Ryan's dismissive look made her feel dirty and judged all over again. Dinner was tense and uncomfortable. Michael tried to make small talk, asking Emma gentle questions about Tennessee and her life before Atlanta. Emma answered quietly, very aware of Ryan's presence. He ate in silence, his attention seemingly on his phone, but she could feel his eyes on her periodically, assessing her. After dinner, as Emma was helping clear the dishes, she couldn't just sit and be waited on. It didn't feel right. Ryan cornered her in the kitchen. "So what's your story?" he asked, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. His tone wasn't friendly, it was accusatory. "What did you do to get my brother to bring a pregnant homeless girl into his house?" Emma was taken aback by his directness. I wasn't homeless. I was just in trouble. Your brother was kind enough to help me." Laughed, a cold sound that had no humor in it. "Kind? My brother isn't kind. He's calculating. Everything he does has a reason behind it. So I'll ask you again, what do you want from him? Money? A place to live rent-free? Somebody to play daddy to that baby?" "No," Emma said, shocked. "I don't want anything. He just offered me a safe place to stay." "For how long?" Ryan pressed, taking a step closer. "And what exactly are you offering in return?" The insinuation in his voice made Emma's stomach turn. Before she could respond, Michael walked into the kitchen. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his eyes moving from Ryan's aggressive posture to Emma's frightened face. Ryan straightened up, a smirk on his face. "No problem at all, big brother. Just getting to know our new house guest." He gave Emma one last lingering look before walking out of the kitchen. Emma let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. "Don't mind him," Michael said, his voice tight with frustration. "He can be difficult. Are you all right?" Emma nodded, but she wasn't all right. She'd found shelter, yes, but she'd clearly not found peace. That night, as Emma lay in her comfortable bed, she placed her hands on her belly and felt her baby kick. She'd escaped one nightmare, but she was beginning to realize she'd walked straight into another kind of trouble. In this beautiful house, a war was brewing between two brothers, and somehow she was about to become the battlefield. What she didn't know was that Ryan's hostility was about to transform into something far more complicated, something that would force her to make an impossible choice between the man who saved her life and the man who would steal her heart.
The next morning, Emma woke to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was, the softness of the bed, the quiet of the room. It all felt like a dream. Then reality came rushing back, and with it, a knot of anxiety in her stomach. She was a guest in a stranger's house, a house where two brothers clearly couldn't stand each other. She got dressed and made her way downstairs quietly. The house was silent. Michael had already left for work. She found a note on the kitchen counter in neat handwriting. "Help yourself to breakfast. Make yourself at home. I'll be back around 6 p.m. Michael." There was bread, eggs, fresh fruit, cereal, and milk. More food than Emma had seen in one place in months. She made herself scrambled eggs and toast, eating slowly, savoring every bite. As she ate, she thought about her situation. Michael had been incredibly generous, but she couldn't stay here forever. She was a burden, and it was obvious Ryan saw her as an intruder. She needed to find work, any work, so she could get her own place before the baby came. She spent the morning tidying up the already spotless kitchen and living room, trying to make herself useful. She couldn't just sit around doing nothing. That evening, when Michael came home, he found her sitting quietly by the window, watching the sun set over the Atlanta skyline. "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than they had been yesterday. "It was quiet, thank you. Your house is beautiful." He smiled faintly. "It's just a house. Sometimes it feels very empty." He sat down across from her, studying her face. "You look worried, Emma. Is it Ryan? Did he bother you today?" "No, he's been out all day. It's not that. I was just thinking. I can't stay here forever doing nothing. I need to find work. I can clean, I can cook, I can do anything. I need to start earning money before the baby comes." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that too. But first, I need to know, do you think Marcus will try to find you?" Emma shivered at the name. "I don't know. He knows Katie. Maybe she told him things about me, where I'm from. But I don't think he'd go to the police or anything. What he was doing..." She trailed off. "You have no other family or friends in Atlanta?" She shook her head. "Only Katie, and she's not my friend anymore." The betrayal still stung like a fresh wound. "Emma," Michael said carefully, "Katie told you she had a cousin who owned a restaurant." "Yes, that's what she said." "That was a lie, wasn't it? There was never a job." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I figured that out too late. She set me up. I just don't know why. We grew up together. We were best friends." Michael's expression was grim. "Some people will do anything for money. I'm sorry you had to learn that the hard way." He leaned forward. "What kind of work did you want to do here? What were you hoping for when you came to Atlanta?" Emma straightened a little, a touch of pride in her voice. "I finished high school with good grades. I'm good with numbers, good with people. Back home, I was working as a diner waitress, but I wanted more. I thought maybe I could work as a receptionist, or in a shop, or doing bookkeeping. I'm not afraid of hard work. I just want an honest job." She looked at him, her eyes pleading for him to believe her. "I didn't come to Atlanta to depend on anyone. I came to work, to build something for me and my baby." Her sincerity was impossible to doubt. Michael saw in her a determination and dignity that impressed him.
So many people in this city were looking for shortcuts, for easy money, but Emma just wanted a fair chance. I believe you, and I want to help. I own several businesses. One of them is a property management company with an office in Buckhead. They might need someone at the front desk, answering phones, scheduling appointments. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work with benefits. He pulled out his phone. Let me make a call tomorrow, see what we can arrange. Hope bloomed in Emma's chest. Really? You do that? Of course. You deserve a chance to build the life you want. But Emma, you're 6 months pregnant. We also need to get you to a doctor, make sure everything is okay with the baby after all that stress yesterday. Emma's hand went to her belly. I haven't seen a doctor since I left Tennessee. I couldn't afford it. We'll take care of that. First thing tomorrow, I'll have my assistant find you a good OBGYN. We'll make sure you and the baby are healthy. Tears of gratitude filled Emma's eyes. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't need to repay me, Michael said gently. Just take care of yourself and that baby. That's all I ask. For a moment, the heaviness in the house seemed to lift. Emma felt genuine hope for the first time in so long. But then she noticed movement on the staircase. Ryan was standing there, half hidden in shadow, watching them. His face was unreadable, but something in his eyes made her uneasy. How long had he been there? What had he heard? Ryan turned and walked back upstairs without a word. Michael sighed. I should talk to him, explain why you're here. Michael, softly, your brother, does he always look at people like that? Like what? Like he's trying to figure out what they want from him. Michael was quiet for a moment. Ryan's had a hard time trusting people, especially women. He's been burned before, girls who only wanted him for his money, for what our family name could give them. He looked towards the stairs. It's made him cynical. I'm not like that. I know you're not. He just needs time to see it. But as Emma went to bed that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan wasn't just suspicious of her. There was something else in the way he looked at her, something she couldn't quite name. What Emma didn't know was that Ryan had heard every word of their conversation with Michael. He'd heard the sincerity in her voice, seen the tears of gratitude in her eyes, and for the first time, a small crack appeared in the wall he had built around his heart. This pregnant girl with nothing to her name had just done something no one else had managed in years. She had made him question everything he thought he knew about people. But admitting he was wrong meant admitting he was wrong about a lot of things, and Ryan Harrison didn't like being wrong.
The next few days settled into an uneasy routine. Emma did her best to stay out of everyone's way. She would wake early, make breakfast, clean whatever she could find to clean, and then retreat to a room with books from Michael's extensive library. Michael was kind but busy, often leaving before sunrise and returning after dark. He kept his promise, though. His assistant scheduled Emma for a doctor's appointment, and the checkup showed both she and the baby were healthy despite everything she'd been through. The relief Emma felt was overwhelming. Ryan, on the other hand, was an unpredictable presence. Sometimes he ignored her completely, walking past as if she were invisible. Other times, she would catch him watching her, his expression unreadable. He never spoke to her directly, but his presence in the house was like a storm cloud. You never knew when it might break. One afternoon, Ryan's girlfriend came to visit. Her name was Ashley, and she was everything Emma wasn't. Tall, blonde, perfectly made up, wearing clothes that probably cost more than Emma's entire wardrobe back home. Ashley walked into the living room where Emma was reading, took one look at her, and turned to Ryan with narrowed eyes. "Who is she?" Ashley demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. "She's just a guest," Ryan said dismissively, but there was something in his tone that set Ashley off. "A guest? Living in your house? Since when do you have pregnant girls living here, Ryan?" The argument that followed was loud and bitter.
Ashley accused Ryan of hiding things from her, of bringing another woman into their space. Ryan grew defensive, his voice rising as he told her she was being ridiculous. Emma tried to make herself as small as possible in the corner of the room, wishing she could disappear. This was all her fault. Her presence was causing problems for everyone. "Is it because of her?" Ashley suddenly shouted, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Emma. "This pregnant charity case? Is this why you've been distant lately?" "Don't be stupid, Ashley," Ryan shot back. "She has nothing to do with us." But the damage was done. Ashley stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The living room fell into a heavy silence. Ryan stood there, his chest heaving with anger and frustration. He looked at Emma, who was staring at the floor, her hands clasped tightly together, visibly upset. For the first time, something shifted in Ryan's expression. He saw how Ashley's jealousy had unfairly targeted this quiet, pregnant girl who was just trying to survive. He saw how Emma was caught in the crossfire of his messy relationship, his dysfunctional family, through no fault of her own. He walked over to her, his usual arrogance gone. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "You shouldn't have had to witness that." Emma looked up, surprised by the apology. "It's not your fault." "Yes, it is," Ryan insisted. "Ashley was out of line, and He paused, looking genuinely regretful. "My brother, he does this. He brings people home, tries to fix their problems, and expects everyone else to just deal with it. It's frustrating." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Emma didn't know how to respond. She just nodded quietly. "Anyway," Ryan said, shifting awkwardly, "I'm sorry for how I've been treating you. You seem like you're actually trying, not just looking for a handout." It was a small gesture, a tiny crack in the wall of his hostility, but for Emma it felt significant. She'd been so sure that Ryan was cruel and heartless, just like Marcus, but maybe there was more to him than that. As he stood to leave, Emma found herself saying, "Ryan?" He turned. "Yeah? Thank you for the apology." He gave her a small nod and walked away, leaving Emma alone in the quiet living room. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. For the first time, she felt a tiny flicker of something she hadn't expected, empathy for the troubled younger brother. Scene: the heated argument. Despite Ryan's small apology, the tension in the house hadn't truly gone away. It had just been buried under the surface, waiting to erupt. That eruption came 2 days later. Emma was in the living room, trying to read, when she heard the brothers arguing in Michael's study. This time, it was louder and more heated than before. "You had no right, Ryan, no right at all." Michael's voice shook with rage. "That rental property on Cedar Street, those tenants have been there for 15 years. You can't just evict them to flip the building." "It's my decision to make," Ryan yelled back. "You control everything else. The main business, the bank accounts, the investments. That property was the one thing I had some say over, and I needed the money." "Needed the money for what? Another luxury vacation? Another sports car you'll get bored with in 6 months? It's called having a life, Michael. Maybe if you weren't so busy playing saint to every stray that crosses your path, you'd understand what it's like to actually live." The argument escalated, voices rising to a furious pitch. Emma's heart pounded. The shouting brought back terrible memories, memories of her uncles fighting after her grandfather died, of violence and hatred tearing a family apart. Suddenly, the study door burst open. The two brothers stumbled into the hallway, locked in a physical struggle. Michael had Ryan in a headlock, and Ryan was trying to push him away, their faces red from exertion and rage. "Let go of me," Ryan grunted. "Not until you listen," Michael growled back. They wrestled in the hallway, crashing into a small side table. A vase of flowers toppled and shattered on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. Emma jumped to her feet, her hands instinctively going to her pregnant belly. "Please stop," she cried out, her voice desperate. "Please don't fight." She moved towards them, wanting to do something, anything to stop the violence. In the chaos of their struggle, one of them, she wasn't sure who, knocked into her. She stumbled backward, lost her balance, and fell. Emma hit the floor hard, her pregnant belly taking some of the impact. Pain shot through her abdominal. Her duffel bag flew from her hands, spilling its contents across the polished floor. A few worn dresses, a small change purse, a comb, and a faded photograph. The brothers froze instantly, their fight forgotten, as they stared in horror at Emma on the floor, clutching her stomach. The baby. Oh God, the baby. What had they done?
Emma! Both brothers spoke at once. Michael was the first to move. He let go of Ryan and dropped to his knees beside her. "Are you okay? Did we hurt you? The baby. Is the baby okay?" Emma's hands were pressed against her belly, tears streaming down her face. She could feel movement. The baby was kicking, agitated, but alive. "Thank God. Thank God." I'm okay," she managed, her voice shaking. "The baby's moving. I think we're okay." Ryan stood frozen, his face pale with shock and guilt. He'd been so caught up in his anger at his brother that he hadn't even seen Emma approaching. And now... Michael helped Emma sit up carefully. "Are you sure? Should we call a doctor? We can go to the emergency room right now." "No, I'm okay. Really." Emma took a shaky breath. "I just got scared. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have tried to get between you." "No, we're sorry," Michael said firmly. "This is our fault. We were acting like children." Emma's eyes fell on the scattered contents of her bag. Her few possessions looked so pitiful spread across this expensive floor, evidence of just how little she had in the world. But it was the photograph that drew her attention. She reached for it with a trembling hand. The photo showed two young boys, maybe 8 and 10 years old, with their arms slung around each other's shoulders. They were grinning at the camera, grass-stained and happy, holding a baseball bat between them. "They were like you," Emma whispered, her voice thick with tears. She picked up the photograph. "My brothers, Tommy and Jake." Michael and Ryan stood in silence, watching her. Emma's gaze was lost in the past as she stared at the photo. They fought all the time, especially after Daddy died. He left our farm to both of them, 300 acres in Tennessee. He thought if they shared it, they'd have to work together, stay close. She looked up at Michael and Ryan, her eyes swimming with pain that was years old but still raw. It had the opposite effect. They argued over every decision, what crops to plant, which equipment to buy, whether to sell parcels to pay off debt. Mama begged them to stop. She told them they were family, that they only had each other, that no piece of land was worth losing your brother. Emma took a shuddering breath, but they wouldn't listen. Their anger was too big. It swallowed up everything good between them. The room was deathly quiet. Even the usual sounds of the Atlanta evening seemed to have faded away. One day, the fighting got really bad. Emma continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake wanted to sell 40 acres to a developer. Tommy said it would ruin the farm. They were in the barn, and the argument turned physical. They grabbed tools. Jake had a wrench. Tommy grabbed a piece of pipe. She couldn't finish the sentence. She just shook her head, fresh tears streaming down her face. They both died that day. Tommy died at the scene. Jake died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Over 40 acres of land that wasn't worth a fraction of their lives. The horror of her words hung in the air like a weight. Michael and Ryan stared at her, their faces drained of color. The anger between them had completely evaporated, replaced with a sick, terrified understanding. After they were gone, Emma said, her voice hollow, the lawyers came, Daddy's brothers, my uncles. They said since there were no sons left to inherit, the property should go to them. They took everything, the land, the house, the equipment. Mama and I were left with nothing.
She looked from Michael to Ryan, her gaze holding them captive. "That's why Mama got sick. The stress, the grief of losing both her boys, losing everything Daddy worked for. That's why I needed money, why I came to Atlanta in the first place." She gestured around the beautiful house. "You two have so much, and you're fighting over it just like they did. Don't you see? It's not worth it. Nothing is worth losing your brother. Nothing." Her words, born from devastating tragedy, hit them with the force of a physical blow. Ryan was the first to move. He took a step back, his hand going to his mouth. He looked at the broken vase on the floor, at his brother's stunned face, at Emma sitting there with her hand on her pregnant belly, and that photograph clutched in her other hand. The image was seared in his brain. Two brothers dead over property. Two brothers who could have had a lifetime together, gone in an instant because pride and greed mattered more than family. He thought about his own brother, about Michael, who had raised him after their parents died, who had put him through college, who had tried so hard to keep him on the right path. And how had Ryan repaid him? With resentment, recklessness, and constant fighting. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, cracking. He wasn't sure if he was talking to Emma, to Michael, or to himself. He turned and walked up the stairs to his room, closing the door quietly behind him. Michael stood there, looking lost and weary. He helped Emma to her feet. "Are you sure you're okay? No pain, no cramping?" "I'm okay," Emma assured him, "just shaken up." Michael began picking up the pieces of the broken vase, while Emma gathered her belongings and tucked the photograph carefully back into her bag. Neither of them spoke as they cleaned up the mess, but something fundamental had shifted in the house. Emma's story had been more than just a sad tale from her past. It had been a mirror, and the image it reflected was terrifying. Upstairs, Ryan sat on his bed, his head in his hands, replaying Emma's words over and over. For the first time in his life, he understood that he was on a path to destruction, and the person he was destroying wasn't just himself, it was his only brother, the only family he had left. The question was it too late to change?
The next few days, the house was different. The usual tension had been replaced by something else, a thoughtful, heavy quiet. Ryan barely left his room. When he did emerge, he avoided eye contact with everyone and spoke only when necessary. Emma would hear him pacing late at night, his footsteps echoing in the hallway above her room. Michael seemed troubled too. He spent hours in his study, but Emma noticed he wasn't working. Sometimes she'd see him just sitting there, staring out the window at nothing. Emma felt guilty. She hadn't meant to cause such upheaval. She'd just been trying to stop them from hurting each other, and instead she'd opened up old wounds of her own. On the third day after the fight, something unexpected happened. Emma was in the kitchen making lunch when Ryan's friend Derek came to visit. Derek was smooth-talking and confident, the kind of guy who always seemed to be selling something, even when he wasn't. He saw Emma at the counter and immediately turned on the charm. "Well, hello there," he said with a wide grin. "Ryan didn't tell me he had such a beautiful lady staying here." Emma felt uncomfortable immediately. "I'm just a guest," she said politely, trying to move past him. "A guest? Someone as pretty as you shouldn't be working in the kitchen. Let me take you out, show you the real Atlanta. I know all the best places." Before Emma could respond, Ryan appeared in the doorway. His expression was stone cold. "Leave her alone, Derek," his voice low and firm. Derek was surprised. "Hey man, I was just being friendly." "She's not interested," Ryan said, stepping between Derek and Emma. His posture was protective, almost possessive. "Go wait for me in the living room." There was a new authority in Ryan's voice that Derek had never heard before. He shrugged and backed off. "Whatever, man. No need to get territorial." After Derek left the kitchen, Ryan turned to Emma. His eyes were softer than she'd ever seen them. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes, thank you,"
Emma said, genuinely surprised by his intervention. Derek can be persistent, Ryan said by way of apology. Don't pay him any attention. I won't. Ryan hesitated, as if he wanted to say something more. Finally, he just nodded and walked away, leaving Emma staring at him in confusion. This was a completely different person from the hostile young man she'd first met. He had defended her. He had been protective. It was a stark contrast to the arrogant, insulting brother who had made her feel so unwelcome. Scene: the observation. Later that day, Michael witnessed something that gave him pause. He came home early from work and saw Ryan and Emma talking by the pool in the backyard. From the window, he watched them. Ryan was actually listening to Emma, really listening, as she talked about life in her small Tennessee town. There was no anger in his face, no condescension. He looked calm and genuinely interested. Emma was smiling, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, animated as she described the mountains back home. And Ryan was smiling too, not his usual cocky smirk, but a real, genuine smile. Michael walked away from the window, a small smile on his face. Maybe, just maybe, his broken family was beginning to heal, and it was all because of Emma. Scene: the offer. That evening, Michael called Emma into his study. I have some good news, he said, and Emma could hear the warmth in his voice. I spoke with the manager at Harrison Property Management. They have an opening for a receptionist position. It's entry-level, but it's steady work with benefits. Emma's eyes widened. She dropped the dish towel she had been holding. A job? A real office job? Yes, Michael confirmed. You'd be answering phones, scheduling appointments, greeting clients, some basic data entry and filing. The salary is modest to start, about $35,000 a year, but it includes health insurance, which will cover the rest of your pregnancy and the delivery. He smiled at her reaction. If you work hard and prove yourself, there's room to move up in the company. What do you think? Emma couldn't speak for a moment. Her throat was tight with emotion. This was it. This was the dream she'd traveled all the way from Tennessee for. Not just a promise or a possibility, but a real opportunity. Yes, she finally managed. Yes, of course I'm interested. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Her joy was pure and infectious. It lit up her entire face, made her look younger, more hopeful. Michael found himself smiling too. You'll start Monday, Michael said. I'll have my assistant take you shopping this weekend. Get you some appropriate office clothes, whatever you need. I can't let you... Yes, you can, Michael said firmly, but kindly. Consider it an investment in a good employee. You're going to do great, Emma. I know it. Just then, Ryan came down the stairs. He stopped when he saw them in the study, saw Emma's beaming face and Michael's satisfied smile. What's going on? He asked cautiously. Michael gave me a job, Emma announced, unable to contain her excitement. I'm going to be a receptionist at his property management company. I start Monday. Ryan looked from Emma's joyful face to his brother's warm smile. A complex mix of emotions crossed his features. Happiness for Emma, but also something else, something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. Once again, his brother was the hero, the provider, the one who could make Emma's dreams come true. And what did Ryan have to offer? A history of recklessness, an inheritance he'd been fighting over like a child. As he watched them celebrate together, Ryan felt something shift inside him. He didn't just want to be a better person anymore. He wanted to be worthy of that smile Emma was wearing. But he had no idea how to compete with a brother who seemed to have everything figured out.
The weekend was a whirlwind for Emma. Michael's assistant, a kind woman named Patricia, took her shopping in a mall that felt like a palace. They bought 3 professional outfits, simple blouses and comfortable maternity pants that would work for the office. They got her a good pair of flats, a good professional bag, and even some basic makeup. Emma felt like Cinderella being prepared for the ball. By Sunday evening, she had everything laid out and ready for Monday morning. She could barely sleep, her mind racing with excitement and nervousness. Monday morning came bright and clear. Emma got up early, showered, and dressed carefully in her new clothes. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked professional. She looked capable. She looked like someone who belonged in an office. Michael drove her to the property management company himself. It was in a modern building in Buckhead, all glass and steel. He introduced her to the manager, Mr. Patterson, a friendly man in his 50s, who showed her around the office. "You'll mainly be at the front desk," Mr. Patterson explained, "answering phones, greeting clients, keeping the appointment calendar. It's not glamorous, but it's the heart of the operation. If you do well here, we can talk about expanding your responsibilities." Emma nodded eagerly. "I won't let you down, sir." Michael gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze before he left. "You're going to be great." And she was. Emma took to the job like a duck to water. She was professional with clients, efficient with paperwork, and always willing to help. She learned quickly and never complained. Within days, the other employees were commenting on what a great addition she was to the team. Every evening, Emma would come home. She was starting to think of it as home, and share stories about her day. Michael would listen with a proud smile, asking questions and offering encouragement. Ryan was usually there too, and Emma noticed he seemed genuinely interested in her work stories. He'd ask about difficult clients or funny situations, and sometimes even offer advice. "That property on Monroe Street?" he'd say. "Yeah, we had issues with the plumbing there last year. The owner is always slow to approve repairs. Don't let them push you around." It was strange, these moments. The three of them sitting together in the evening, talking like a real family. Emma with her hand on her growing belly, Michael tired from work but content, and Ryan more engaged and present than she had ever seen him. 2 weeks into Emma's new job, Ryan found her sitting by the pool one evening after dinner. The Atlanta sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple as the sun set. "Beautiful sunset," he said, coming to stand beside her. "Yes," Emma agreed, smiling up at him. "I never get tired of seeing the sky here. It's different from Tennessee, bigger somehow." Ryan sat down next to her. For a moment, they just sat in comfortable silence. "Emma," he said finally, "I was thinking, you've been in Atlanta for months now, but you've barely seen the city. You work, you come home, that's it." "I like it that way. It's peaceful." "I know, but what if I showed you around this weekend? Not the fancy tourist spots Michael would take you to, but the real Atlanta, the neighborhoods, the markets, the places where real people actually live." Emma looked at him surprised. "You want to show me around?" "Yeah, I mean, if you want to, no pressure." He was actually blushing slightly, something Emma had never seen before. She found herself smiling. "I'd like that, Ryan. That sounds really nice." His face lit up with a boyish grin. "Great. How about Saturday? We could—" "What are you doing, Ryan?" Michael's voice cut through the air. He was standing by the glass door leading to the backyard, his arms crossed, his expression hard. Ryan's smile vanished. "I was just talking to Emma." "It looked like more than talking," Michael said, walking toward them. "I told you to leave her alone. She's here to get her life back on track, not to be one of your distractions." "A distraction?" Ryan stood up, his fists clenching. "It was being friendly. Is that a crime now?" "I know how you are with women, Ryan. Emma's not one of your party girls. She's pregnant, vulnerable, and she's been through enough without you playing your games." "Games?" Ryan's voice rose with anger. "You think everything I do is a game? Maybe you're the one who can't stand the idea of her talking to me instead of you." Emma felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. They were arguing about her, as if she wasn't even there. "It's okay, Michael," she said softly, standing up. "Ryan was just being nice. He offered to show me around the city." But Michael's protective instincts were in overdrive.
He saw his reckless younger brother trying to charm an innocent pregnant woman who owed Michael everything. He wouldn't allow it. "Stay away from her, Ryan," Michael warned, his voice low and dangerous. "Or what?" Ryan challenged, stepping closer to his brother. "You'll throw me out of my own father's house?" The two brothers stood face to face, that old familiar anger and rivalry flaring up between them again. But this time, it wasn't about money or property. This time, it was about Emma. Emma couldn't bear to watch. She felt like a prize in a competition she never asked to be a part of. "Excuse me," she whispered, and she quickly walked back into the house. She went to her room and closed the door, her heart pounding. She could hear their raised voices continuing outside, could feel the tension seeping through the walls. She sat on her bed and placed both hands on her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her distress. Emma was grateful for Michael's protection, but it was also suffocating. And Ryan, his invitation seemed so genuine, so sincere. She'd felt something when he smiled at her, something warm and hopeful. But now that feeling was tangled up with guilt and confusion. She owed Michael everything. He'd saved her life, given her shelter, provided her with a job. How could she even think about his brother? Yet her heart was beginning to pull her in a direction her mind said she shouldn't go. In the backyard, the brothers' argument continued, their warm Atlanta night carrying their voices. Emma had become the center of a storm she never meant to create.
While the drama unfolded inside the Harrison mansion, another story, one of desperation and foolish choices, was playing out at the front gate. Marcus Torres was the night security guard for the estate. He was young, barely 25, with dreams much bigger than his minimum wage job. Every night he sat in his small guardhouse, watching expensive cars come and go, looking at massive homes with their pools and manicured lawns, and wanting more. He wanted to be one of them, the rich ones, the ones who didn't have to worry about money. 3 weeks ago, he'd met a girl at a coffee shop in downtown Atlanta. Her name was Jessica, and she was beautiful, with long dark hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that made Marcus's heart race. When she asked what he did for a living, Marcus lied. "I'm a real estate investor," he'd said, feeling a rush of power from the deception. "I manage properties in Buckhead." Jessica's eyes had lit up with interest. From that moment on, Marcus built an elaborate fantasy. He told her he lived in one of the estates he managed. He showed her pictures of expensive cars he claimed were his. He promised her the world. The problem was, he couldn't deliver. Every date had to be carefully planned to avoid her discovering the truth. He'd take her to restaurants he couldn't afford, putting meals on credit cards he couldn't pay off. He'd meet her away from the estate, making excuses about why she couldn't come to his place yet. But Jessica was getting suspicious. She was starting to ask questions, and Marcus was running out of lies. That's when he made the worst decision of his life. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Michael Harrison had taken a business trip to Miami for 3 days. His silver Mercedes was parked in the garage, and Marcus had the spare key, kept for emergencies only. This, Marcus decided, was an emergency of the heart. He called Jessica. "Baby, I'm free this afternoon. Let me pick you up. Wear something nice." His hands shook as he took the Mercedes out of the garage. The leather seats, the new car smell, the smooth purr of the engine, it all made him feel like the man he'd pretended to be. He picked up Jessica from her apartment, and she was thrilled. "This is gorgeous, Marcus," she said, running her hand over the dashboard. "Is this new?" "Just one of my cars," he said casually, trying to hide his terror. "I have 3, but this one's my favorite for cruising." He drove them around Atlanta, not daring to go too far. He couldn't risk putting even a scratch on Michael's car. He bought Jessica an ice cream cone from a food truck, telling her he liked to keep it real sometimes instead of always going to fancy places.
As he was driving back toward the estate, carefully, so carefully, disaster struck. A car pulled up alongside them at a red light. Marcus glanced over, and his blood turned to ice. It was Ben Crawford, Michael's best friend and business partner. Ben knew Michael's car. Ben knew Marcus was the security guard. Ben's eyes widened in shock as he recognized both the car and the driver. He immediately pulled out his phone. Marcus panicked. He ran the red light, causing Jessica to scream. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Sorry, I thought I saw something," he stammered. But it was too late. His phone buzzed with a text from Ben. "Pull over now. We need to talk." Marcus knew he was caught. His fantasy was crumbling. With trembling hands, he pulled into a parking lot. Ben followed and parked behind him, blocking him in. "Stay here," Marcus told Jessica. "I'll be right back." He got out of the car and approached Ben, who looked furious. "Marcus, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Ben demanded, keeping his voice low but intense. "That's Michael's car." "Please, Mr. Crawford, please don't tell Mr. Harrison. I'll lose my job. I was trying to impress someone. It was stupid, I know. Please." Ben looked at the young man who was practically trembling with fear. He saw not a criminal, but a foolish kid who'd gotten in way over his head trying to impress a girl. "You put me in a terrible position, Marcus," Ben said sternly. "Michael trusts you to protect his property, not steal it." I know. Please, sir, give me 1 day, just 1 day to fix this. I'll tell her the truth. I'll make this right. Please don't let me lose my job. It's all I have." Ben hesitated. The desperation in Marcus's voice was real, and Ben remembered being young and stupid once himself, doing things for a girl that made no sense in hindsight. "1 day, Marcus," he said finally. "You have until tomorrow evening. Return that car, tell that girl the truth, and pray I don't change my mind about calling Michael. If I hear one more word about you misusing Mr. Harrison's property, I'll make sure you're not just fired, I'll have you arrested. Understand?" "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir," Marcus said, nearly collapsing with relief. He drove Jessica home, his hands shaking the entire time. When he dropped her off, she could tell something was wrong. "Are you okay? You seem really stressed." "I'm fine," Marcus lied. "Just remembered an important meeting. I'll call you later." He drove the Mercedes back to the estate, parked it exactly where it had been, and locked the garage. Then he went to his guardhouse and put his head in his hands. His web of lies was about to unravel. Tomorrow, he'd have to tell Jessica the truth, that he wasn't a real estate investor, that he didn't own cars or property, that he was just a security guard trying to be someone he wasn't. Marcus had no idea that his personal drama was about to collide with the Harrison family's drama in the most unexpected way. And when it did, the collision would teach everyone a valuable lesson about honesty, worth, and the price of pretending to be something you're not. The same lesson that Ryan was beginning to learn, and one that would change everything.
The day after Michael and Ryan's argument in the backyard, the house was filled with an uncomfortable silence. Emma threw herself into her work, grateful for the distraction. At the office, she was thriving. Mr. Patterson had praised her twice that week for her efficiency and professionalism, but at home, the tension was suffocating. Michael had become even more protective, barely letting Emma out of his sight when he was home. Ryan, meanwhile, had withdrawn again, but this time it felt different. He wasn't angry, he was hurt. Emma felt torn in two. She was grateful to Michael for everything he'd done, but she also felt an undeniable pull toward Ryan, toward the man he was becoming rather than the man he'd been. The situation came to a head that Saturday evening. Samuel had spent the entire day thinking about his relationship with his brother. Emma's story about her brothers, about Tommy and Jake destroying each other over property, haunted him. He kept seeing that photograph in his mind, those two happy boys with their arms around each other, not knowing their future held such tragedy.
He thought about his own brother, about Michael, who had basically raised him after their parents died in a car accident when Ryan was 16. Michael was 24, barely an adult himself, but he'd stepped up. He'd put his own life on hold to make sure Ryan finished high school, got into college, had opportunities. And how had Ryan repaid him? With resentment and rebellion at every turn. Ryan finally worked up the courage to do what he should have done weeks ago. He went to Michael's study and knocked on the door. "Can we talk?" he asked. Michael looked up from his laptop, surprised. "Of course, come in." Ryan walked in and stood awkwardly in the middle of the room. This was harder than he'd expected. "I wanted to apologize," he began, "for everything, for my behavior, for the property I sold without talking to you, for all the money I've wasted, for being a terrible brother." Michael put down his pen, giving Ryan his full attention. "I've been a fool," Ryan continued, the words coming faster now. "I always thought you were trying to control me, keep me under your thumb, but you weren't. You were just trying to protect what Dad built and protect me from my own stupidity." He looked at his brother, his eyes filled with emotion. Emma's story about her brothers, about Tommy and Jake destroying each other over property, haunted him. He knew then he had to change. He had to be better. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Ryan could see the emotion working across his face. "I'm sorry too, Ryan," Michael finally said, his voice thick. "I haven't been a perfect brother either. I've been so focused on being responsible, on keeping everything together, that I forgot to just be your brother. Not your guardian, not your boss, your brother." He stood up and walked around the desk. "I should have listened to you more, should have trusted you more. I treated you like a kid instead of a man." "I acted like a kid," Ryan said with a sad smile. "Yeah, you did," Michael agreed, but there was warmth in his voice. "But you're changing. I can see it. Emma's been good for you, for both of us." Ryan took a deep breath. "About Emma." Michael tensed slightly. "I know you brought her here, and I know you care about her, but Michael, I think I'm falling for her. I know I don't deserve her. I know I have no right to even think about her that way, but I can't help it." Michael studied his younger brother's face. He saw the sincerity there, the vulnerability. This wasn't Ryan chasing another conquest. This was real. "What are you asking me?" Michael said quietly. "I'm asking for your blessing, or at least for you not to stand in the way. I want a chance to show her I can be a better man, the kind of man she and her baby deserve." Michael walked over to the window, looking out at the darkening Atlanta sky. He was quiet for so long that Ryan started to worry. Finally, Michael turned around. "Emma doesn't owe me anything. I didn't bring her here expecting gratitude or loyalty. I brought her here because she needed help. She's free to make her own choices, to follow her own heart." He looked at Ryan seriously. "But Ryan, you have to understand, Emma been hurt, betrayed by people she trusted. She's pregnant and vulnerable. If you're going to pursue her, you have to be absolutely sure. You can't treat her like you've treated other women. You can't get bored and move on. This is real life, not a game." "I know, I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." Michael studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I have your blessing," he said. "Just don't hurt her, because if you do, I will never forgive you, brother or not." "I won't," Ryan promised. "I swear I won't." The two brothers looked at each other, and something passed between them that hadn't been there in years. Understanding, respect, love. Michael stepped forward and pulled Ryan into a hug. Ryan was startled at first, then hugged back, tight. "I love you, brother," Michael said. "I love you too," Ryan replied, his voice muffled against Michael's shoulder. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. Later that evening, Michael found Emma sitting in the garden, one hand on her pregnant belly, looking up at the stars. "Emma, can we talk?" he asked gently. She nodded, and he sat beside her. "I want you to know something," Michael said.
You don't owe me anything. Not gratitude, not loyalty, nothing. You're free to make your own choices about your life, about your future." Emma looked at him, confused. "If Ryan is the one who makes you happy," Michael said, quietly, "then I want you to feel free to explore that. You're not betraying me. You're just following your heart." Tears filled Emma's eyes. She'd been carrying such guilt, such conflict. But Michael was giving her permission. No, more than that, he was giving her freedom. That night, as Emma lay in bed with her hands on her belly, she finally allowed herself to admit what her heart had been trying to tell her for weeks. She was falling for Ryan Harrison, and for the first time, she didn't feel guilty about it. The day after Michael and Ryan's heartfelt conversation, something remarkable happened. Ryan announced he was cooking dinner for everyone. "You? Cooking?" Michael raised an eyebrow, a teasing smile on his face. "The last time you tried to cook, you set off the smoke alarm and gave our housekeeper a week off from stress." "I've been practicing," Ryan said defensively, but there was humor in his voice. "I'm making Mom's pot roast, remember? The one she used to make on Sundays?" The mention of their mother hung in the air for a moment. She had died 5 years ago, and her memory was still tender. "Mom's pot roast," Michael said softly. "Yeah, I remember. That was her specialty." Emma, who had been listening from the living room, felt touched by the gesture. She stood up. "Can I help? I'm pretty good in the kitchen." "I'd like that," Ryan said, his eyes meeting hers with warmth. The three of them ended up in the kitchen that Saturday afternoon. It was awkward at first. Michael kept trying to take over, correcting Ryan's technique. Ryan kept insisting he knew what he was doing. "You're using too much rosemary," Michael said, peering into the roasting pan. "It's fine," Ryan shot back. "Trust me. The last time I trusted your cooking, we ordered pizza." Emma laughed, a bright sound that made both brothers stop and look at her. She was chopping vegetables, her pregnant belly bumping against the counter, her face relaxed and happy. "Why don't we let the chef do his work?" she suggested diplomatically, echoing words she had said before. "But Ryan, maybe just a little less rosemary next time?" Ryan grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Slowly, the tension melted away. They fell into an easy rhythm, chopping, stirring, seasoning. Michael told a story about the time their mother had chased Ryan around the house with a wooden spoon for stealing cookies before dinner. Ryan countered with a story about Michael trying to bake a birthday cake that came out hard as a rock. They laughed, real, genuine laughter that echoed through the house and chased away years of resentment and anger. Emma watched them, her heart full. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not the hatred and violence that had destroyed her brothers, but this easy, loving teasing between people who truly cared about each other. When the pot roast was finally ready, they set the table together. The food smelled incredible, rich with herbs and tender vegetables. They also made mashed potatoes and a simple salad. As they sat down to eat, Michael raised his glass of water. "To new beginnings," he said, looking at his brother. "To new beginnings," Ryan echoed, clinking his glass against Michael's. They both turned to Emma. "And to Emma," Michael added, "for reminding us what's important." Emma blushed, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "To family," she said softly. They were just about to take their first bite when there was frantic knocking at the front door. Loud, urgent, desperate knocking that shattered the peaceful moment. Michael frowned. Who could that be? He got up and walked to the front door. When he opened it, he found Marcus Torres, the security guard, standing on the doorstep. His uniform was rumpled and his face was pale with panic. Behind him stood a young woman with dark hair and angry eyes. "Mr. Harrison, please," Marcus cried out, his voice shaking. "I need your help. I'm in serious trouble." "This man is a liar," Jessica shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Marcus. "A complete fraud." Ryan and Emma had come to the doorway to see what was happening.
Michael looked from the terrified guard to the furious woman, then glanced back and saw Ben Crawford standing a short distance away, looking both apologetic and concerned. Michael immediately understood what must have happened. "Everyone, please come inside," Michael said calmly. "Let's not have this conversation on the doorstep." He led them into the living room. Ryan and Emma stood by the dining table, their dinner forgotten. The peaceful evening had just taken a very unexpected turn.
"Marcus," Michael said, his voice stern but controlled. "What's this about?" Marcus hung his head in shame. "Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry. I did something terrible. I took your car without permission. I told Jessica I was a real estate investor, that I was rich, that the car was mine. I lied to her about everything." Jessica turned on him, her voice sharp with hurt and anger. "He made a fool of me. I thought he was successful, that he had money, but he's just a security guard living in a tiny apartment." The way she said "just a security guard" was filled with contempt, and Emma flinched. She knew what it was like to be looked down on for not having money, for being just something that others considered beneath them. Michael listened to the whole story, how Marcus had built an elaborate lie, how he'd taken the Mercedes while Michael was out of town, how Ben had caught him. When Jessica finished her angry rant, Michael was silent for a long moment. He looked at Marcus, who was trembling, expecting to be fired on the spot. "You were wrong to lie, Marcus," Michael said finally, "and you were very wrong to take my car without permission. That was a serious breach of trust." Marcus flinched, waiting for the axe to fall. "But," he continued, his voice softening, "I understand why you did it. You wanted to be someone you're not. That's a mistake a lot of people make." He glanced meaningfully at Ryan, who looked down at the floor, recognizing himself in Marcus's story. Ryan had spent years pretending to be more important than he was, using his father's money to create an image that had nothing to do with who he really was. Michael turned to Jessica. "And you," he said gently but firmly, "are you angry because he lied, or because he's not the rich man you thought he was?" Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it again, looking uncomfortable. "A person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or the car they drive," Michael said, his words carrying weight that extended far beyond this moment. "Marcus works an honest job. There's no shame in that. He was wrong to deceive you, but judging him for what he does for a living is just as wrong." The room fell silent. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Michael's words weren't just for Jessica, they were for everyone. In that moment, she realized she was witnessing something profound, a man teaching a lesson about human dignity that would change everyone in the room. And she was about to learn that the biggest changes were yet to come. Jessica stood there, her anger deflating like a balloon. She looked at Marcus, then at Michael, then down at her expensive designer purse. Michael's words had struck a nerve. She started, then stopped. "He lied to me." "Yes, he did. But let me ask you something. If he had told you the truth from the beginning, if he'd said, 'I'm a security guard, I work hard but I don't make much money,' would you have given him a chance?" Jessica didn't answer, but the look on her face said everything. Marcus looked up at her, tears in his eyes. "I knew you wouldn't. That's why I lied. I'm sorry, Jessica. I'm so sorry. You're beautiful and smart, and you deserve someone better than me. But I really liked you. I just wanted you to like me back, even if it was based on a lie." His honesty, painful as it was, seemed to reach something in Jessica. Her expression softened slightly. "You should have given me a chance to decide that for myself," she said quietly. "You took that choice away from me." "I know," Marcus said, "and I'm sorry." Emma, who had been watching from the sidelines, couldn't stay quiet anymore. She stepped forward, her hand on her pregnant belly. "I understand why you're hurt. To being lied to is terrible,
But Marcus is right about one thing. He does work hard. He's out there every night, keeping this neighborhood safe. That's honest work. That's nothing to be ashamed of. She looked at Marcus. But you have to stop pretending to be someone else. The right person will like you for who you really are, not for what you pretend to be. Her words, spoken with such gentle conviction, resonated through the room. Ryan watched her, his heart swelling with something he'd never felt before, a deep, overwhelming admiration for this woman who had every reason to be bitter and judgmental, but instead chose compassion. Michael looked at Marcus. I'm not going to fire you, but this can never happen again. You're a good guard, Marcus. You show up on time, you do your job well. That's worth something. Don't throw it away by trying to be something you're not. Marcus nodded, relief washing over his face. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I swear it won't happen again. See that it doesn't, Michael said. He turned to Jessica. And I hope you'll think about what really matters in a person, because wealth and success can disappear overnight, but character, that's what lasts. Jessica didn't say anything, but Emma could see the wheels turning in her head. Maybe she would think about it. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, the lesson had been offered. Marcus and Jessica left together, not as a couple, but not as enemies either. There was still a lot for them to figure out. After the door closed behind them, the house fell into a contemplative silence. Ryan was the first to speak. That could have been me. Actually, that was me, pretending to be more important than I was, using Dad's money to create an image that had nothing to do with who I really am. Michael looked at his brother with understanding. We all pretend sometimes. The question is whether we're brave enough to stop. Emma felt a lump in her throat. My friend Katie, she pretended to be my friend when really she just wanted money. Marcus pretended to be rich when he wasn't. We all wear masks sometimes, maybe because we're scared people won't like who we really are. She looked at both brothers, but the truth is, always better, even when it's hard, even when it's painful, because real connections can only happen when we're honest. Ryan walked over to her. You're right, he said, and I don't want to wear a mask anymore. Not with you, not with anyone. He took a deep breath. Emma, I haven't been honest with you about something. I need to tell you how I feel. Emma's heart began to race. Michael quietly excused himself, giving them privacy. When you first came here, I was horrible to you. I judged you, I was cruel, and I'm ashamed of how I acted. But then you got to know you. I saw your strength, your kindness, your honesty. You changed something in me, Emma. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. I'm not perfect. I'm still figuring out who I am and who I want to be. But I know one thing certain. I want to be better, for myself, for my brother, and for you, if you'll give me a chance. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Ryan, I know you don't owe me anything, he said quickly. I know I don't deserve you, but I'm asking anyway. I'm asking if you might feel something for me too, something real.
Emma looked at this man who had transformed from her worst critic into someone who made her heart flutter every time he smiled. She thought about Michael's blessing, about the freedom he'd given her to follow her heart. I do feel something, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I've been trying not to, because I felt guilty. Michael saved me, gave me everything. How could I have feelings for someone else? But Michael gave me permission to feel this way. He told me I'm free to follow my heart. And my heart, she placed her free hand over her chest, my heart is pulling me toward you. Ryan's face transformed with joy. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently.
Then let me prove I'm worthy of that. Let me show you I can be the man you and your baby deserve." Emma felt something shift in her chest, a wall crumbling, a door opening. For the first time since her nightmare with Marcus had begun, she felt not just safe, but hopeful. Hopeful that love could be real and honest, that people could change, that happy endings weren't just for fairy tales. But she had no idea that her happiness was about to face its biggest test, because in 3 days, someone from her past would come looking for her, and when he found her, the peace she'd finally found would be shattered in ways she never imagined.
The week following Ryan's confession was like a dream for Emma. The house that had once felt like a battleground now felt like a true home. Ryan was different. He wasn't just changing, he was becoming someone entirely new. He started helping Michael with the family businesses, actually showing up to meetings and asking thoughtful questions instead of fighting every decision. He cut ties with his party friends who only cared about money and status. He spent his evenings at home, often just sitting with Emma, talking about everything and nothing. Michael watched the transformation with quiet satisfaction. His brother was finally growing up, and Emma was the catalyst for that change. One Saturday, Ryan made good on his promise to show Emma around Atlanta. He picked her up early in the morning. Michael had given him their blessing and even lent him his car with a knowing smile. "Where are we going?" Emma asked as they drove through the city. "You'll see," Ryan said mysteriously. He took her to places tourists never saw. They visited a local farmer's market where vendors sold fresh produce and homemade crafts. Emma loved the energy, the diversity, the feeling of real community. They walked through historic neighborhoods where Ryan told her stories about Atlanta's history. They stopped at a small soul food restaurant in a neighborhood where Ryan clearly wasn't a regular, but he didn't act uncomfortable or out of place. He treated everyone with respect, asked the owner about her family, and made Emma feel like she was seeing the city through new eyes. "This is incredible," Emma said, as they ate fried chicken and collard greens. "This is the Atlanta I hoped I'd find." "I've lived here my whole life," Ryan admitted, "and I never really saw it before. I was too busy chasing what I thought success looked like. Fast cars, expensive clubs, superficial friends. I missed what was real." After lunch, he drove her to Piedmont Park. They walked slowly. Emma couldn't move very fast in her 8th month of pregnancy, and found a bench under a large oak tree. "Emma," said Ryan, turning to face her, "I want to talk about the future, about us, and about your baby." Emma's hand went instinctively to her belly. "Okay?" "I know this baby isn't mine," Ryan said carefully, "and I would never try to replace the father or pretend to be something I'm not, but I want you to know, if you'll let me, I want to be there, for both of you, not as an obligation, but because I want to." Tears filled Emma's eyes. "Ryan, I want to be at doctor's appointments if you'll let me. I want to help when the baby comes. I want to be someone you can count on, someone your child can count on. I know I have to earn that trust, and I will, however long it takes." Emma was overwhelmed by his sincerity. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you want to take on someone else's baby? You could have anyone, Ryan, someone without baggage, without complications." Ryan reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "Because you're not baggage, Emma. You're a gift. You walked into my life and showed me who I could be instead of who I was. And that baby," he placed his hand gently on her belly, "that baby is going to be lucky to have you as a mother. If I can be part of that in any way, I'd be honored." Emma had never felt so cherished, so valued, not as a burden or a charity case, but as someone truly worthy of love. "I'd like that," she whispered. "I'd like that very much." Ryan leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her softly. It was tender and careful, full of promise and hope. 2 weeks later, Michael and Ryan did something that shocked Emma completely. They threw Emma a baby shower.
Emma came home from work one Friday evening to find the house decorated with pastel balloons and streamers. A table was laden with gifts wrapped in soft yellows and greens. Michael's assistant, Patricia, was there, along with several women from Emma's office and even Mr. Patterson's wife.
"Surprise!" they all shouted as Emma walked in. Emma burst into tears, happy tears. She couldn't believe they'd done this for her. "Every baby deserves to be celebrated," Michael said warmly, giving her a hug. "And every mother deserves to be honored." The afternoon was filled with laughter, games, and gift openings. Emma received everything she needed: a crib, a car seat, baby clothes, bottles, diapers, blankets, things she'd been quietly worrying about how to afford. But the biggest surprise came from Ryan. "I have one more gift," he said, handing her a manila envelope. Emma opened it, confused. Inside was a lease agreement. "It's for a small apartment, 2 bedrooms, in a safe neighborhood near your office. I put down the first and last month's rent. It's yours for as long as you need it." Emma looked up at him stunned. "Ryan, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not charity," Ryan said gently. "You have a job. You can afford the rent going forward. I just wanted to give you a head start. You need your own place for when the baby comes, a place that's truly yours." Michael stepped forward. "We both agreed this was the right thing to do. You've been a guest long enough. It's time for you to have your own home." Emma was overwhelmed. These 2 men had given her more than shelter. They'd given her dignity, independence, and a real chance at the life she dreamed of. "Thank you," she whispered, hugging them both. "Thank you so much." As the party wound down and guests left, Emma sat in the living room, surrounded by baby gifts, feeling more blessed than she'd ever felt in her life. Ryan sat beside her, his hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "Strong little one," he said with a smile. "Just like the mama," Michael added from his chair. Emma laughed through her tears. She had come to Atlanta broken and terrified, but she was leaving stronger, supported, and surrounded by something she'd never expected to find: family. That night, as Emma packed her few belongings to move into her new apartment, she felt truly free for the first time in her life. Free from fear, from dependence, from shame. She was building something real: a life, a career, a family. The American dream she'd chased had finally become her reality. But as she drifted off to sleep that night, she had no idea that 200 miles away in Tennessee, someone else was packing a bag. Someone who'd been looking for her. Someone who'd finally found her address. Marcus, the real Marcus, the one she'd fled from, was coming to Atlanta, and he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. Emma had been in her new apartment for 3 days. It was small, but perfect. A cozy living room, a bedroom for her, and a second bedroom that would be the nursery. Ryan had helped her move in, assembling furniture and hanging curtains. Michael had sent over a care package of groceries and household essentials. She was finally, truly independent. On her 4th morning in the new place, Emma was getting ready for work when she heard a knock at her door. She assumed it was the building manager, or maybe a neighbor introducing themselves. She opened the door without checking the peephole. Marcus stood there. Not Marcus Torres, the security guard. Marcus Daniels, the man she'd fled from months ago in that terrifying dash down the streets of Atlanta. Emma's blood turned to ice. Her hand instinctively went to her pregnant belly, now round and obvious at 8.5 months. "Hello, Emma," Marcus said, his voice cold and controlled. "You've been hard to find." Emma tried to close the door, but Marcus put his foot in the way. "We need to talk," he said, pushing his way inside. "Get out," Emma shouted, backing away. "Get out or I'll call the police." "And tell them what?" Marcus sneered. "That you stole from me?
That you've been living rent-free on my property for 3 months and then ran off without paying what you owed? I didn't owe you anything, Emma cried. You were holding me prisoner. That's not how the police will see it, Marcus said, moving closer. He grabbed her arm. You're coming back with me, Emma. We had an arrangement. Before Emma could scream, the apartment door burst open. Ryan charged in like a storm, his eyes blazing with fury. Get your hands off her, Ryan roared. Marcus spun around, startled. Who the hell are you? I'm the person who's about to make you regret ever laying a hand on her, Ryan said, his voice deadly calm. He had his phone. And I've already called 911. The police are on their way. Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. This is between Emma and me. This doesn't concern you, rich boy. Everything about Emma concerns me, Ryan said, stepping forward. He was taller than Marcus, broader, and right now he looked like he wanted to tear Marcus apart. Something in Ryan's eyes must have convinced Marcus he was serious. He released Emma's arm and stepped back. This isn't over, Marcus threatened. She owes me money, 3 months of room and board. I'll take her to court. Please do, a voice said from the doorway. Michael walked in, also holding his phone. Because I've been recording this entire conversation. You just admitted on tape to holding someone against their will. That's called kidnapping and assault and attempted extortion. Marcus's face paled. He looked from Michael to Ryan, realizing he was outnumbered and outsmarted. I'll also testify, came another voice. Katie stepped into the apartment, her face filled with shame and regret. I'm the one who brought Emma to him. I'll tell the police everything, how Marcus paid me to bring him vulnerable women, how he'd hold them there, threatening them if they tried to leave. Katie? Emma gasped. Katie's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I was desperate for money and I made a terrible choice, but I can't live with what I did anymore. I've been looking for you to apologize and to make things right. The sound of sirens grew closer. Marcus realized his game was up. He glared at Emma with pure hatred. This isn't over, he spat, and tried to push past Michael to leave.
But Michael blocked his way. Oh, I think it is, he said calmly. You're not going anywhere until the police get here. 2 police officers arrived moments later. After hearing the story, seeing Michael's recording, and listening to Katie's testimony, they arrested Marcus on the spot for attempted assault and harassment, with more charges likely to follow once they investigated his operation. As they led him away in handcuffs, Marcus shouted threats, but Emma barely heard them. She was shaking so badly she could barely stand. Ryan wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. You're safe, he murmured. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe. Emma clung to him, tears streaming down her face. How did you know? She asked. How did you know to come? I had a bad feeling, Ryan admitted. I drove by to check on you before work, and I saw him at your door. I knew immediately something was wrong. Michael placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. We're going to make sure he can never bother you again. We'll testify, we'll press charges, whatever it takes. Katie approached Emma hesitantly. I know you can never forgive me, she said, her voice breaking. But I want to help. I'll testify against Marcus. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Emma looked at her former friend, the person who had betrayed her so completely. Part of her wanted to hate Katie, but she also saw genuine remorse in her eyes. Thank you for coming forward, Emma said quietly. That took courage. Katie nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll make this right, I promise. After the police left and Katie departed with promises to cooperate with the investigation, Emma sat on her couch between Michael and Ryan, still trembling from the encounter. She placed her hands on her belly and felt her baby kick strongly, as if to say, We're okay, Mama. We're going to be okay.
and for the first time, Emma truly believed it. The shadow from her past had found her, but it hadn't destroyed her. She wasn't alone anymore. She had people who would fight for her, protect her, stand by her. Her Atlanta nightmare was finally over. But her new life, her real life, was just beginning. And in exactly 1 week, it would begin in the most beautiful way possible. 1 week after the confrontation with Marcus, Emma woke up at 3 a.m. with contractions. She lay in bed for a few minutes, timing them, trying to stay calm. They were coming every 7 minutes. This was it. Her baby was coming. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and called Ryan. He answered on the first ring. "Emma, are you okay?" "The baby's coming," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Contractions are 7 minutes apart. I'm on my way. Don't move. Actually, move if you need to. I'm coming right now." 15 minutes later, Ryan burst through her apartment door, overnight bag in hand. Michael was right behind him. "How are you feeling?" Michael asked, his face full of concern. "Scared. Excited. Both." "That's perfectly normal," Michael assured her. "Let's get you to the hospital." The drive to Northside Hospital was a blur. Emma sat in the back seat with Ryan, gripping his hand through each contraction. He didn't complain once, even though she was probably cutting off his circulation. At the hospital, they got Emma checked in and settled in a labor and delivery room. The contractions were getting stronger and closer together. The nurse said she was progressing well. "You're doing great," Ryan said, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. "You're so strong, Emma." "I don't feel strong," Emma gasped as another contraction hit. "I feel like I'm being torn apart." "You are strong," Michael said from the corner of the room. "You're the strongest person I know." The hours that followed were the longest and most intense of Emma's life. Ryan stayed by her side the entire time, letting her squeeze his hand, encouraging her through every contraction, never leaving even when she snapped at him during the worst of the pain. Michael stepped out to give them privacy during the difficult moments, but stayed nearby, ready to help with anything they needed. Finally, after 14 hours of labor, at 5:47 p.m., Emma gave one final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's cry. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing the tiny, screaming infant on Emma's chest. "Congratulations, Mama." Emma looked down at her daughter, and felt a love so fierce and overwhelming it took her breath away. The baby had a shock of dark hair, tiny perfect fingers, and Emma's own nose.
"Oh my God," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, she's perfect." Ryan was crying too, looking at the baby with wonder. "She's beautiful, Emma. She's absolutely beautiful." "Do you want to cut the cord?" the nurse asked Ryan. Ryan looked at Emma for permission. She nodded, and he carefully cut the umbilical cord, his hands shaking slightly. After the nurses had cleaned and weighed the baby, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, they wrapped her in a pink blanket and handed her back to Emma. Michael peeked in the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course," Emma said. Michael approached the bed and looked down at the baby. His eyes were suspiciously bright. "She's perfect," he said softly. "Just perfect. What's her name?" Emma looked down at her daughter. She'd been thinking about names for months, but hadn't been able to decide. Now, holding her baby, she knew. "Grace," Emma said. "Her name is Grace." Both brothers looked at her in surprise. "Because of you," Emma explained, looking at them. "Grace means undeserved favor, a gift you didn't earn but were given anyway. That's what you both gave me, grace. You saved me when I had nothing, asked for nothing in return. You gave me a job, a home, a family. I want her name to remind me every day of the grace I was shown." Ryan wiped his eyes. "Grace," he repeated. "It's perfect." Michael squeezed Emma's shoulder gently. "She's lucky to have you as her mother." 3 months later.
3 months after Grace was born, Emma stood in her apartment getting ready for a special dinner. Grace was asleep in her crib, 3 months old now, and already showing signs of her mama's stubborn personality. There was a knock at the door. Emma opened it to find Ryan standing there in a suit, holding a bouquet of flowers. "You look beautiful," he said. "You've seen me covered in spit up and baby formula for 3 months. I'm sure I look terrible." "You look perfect," Ryan insisted, and the sincerity in his eyes made Emma's heart flutter. Over the past few months, Ryan had been true to his word. He'd been there for every late-night feeding he could help with, every doctor's appointment, every difficult moment. He'd changed diapers, rocked Grace to sleep, and treated Emma's daughter as if she were her own. He'd also continued to change himself. He'd taken on real responsibility in the family business. He'd cut ties with his toxic friends. He'd become the man he'd promised he would be. "Where's Grace?" Emma asked. "At Michael's for the evening. He insisted on babysitting so we could have a proper date night." Ryan grinned. "He's getting soft in his old age." They went to a nice but not pretentious restaurant. Over dinner, they talked about everything. Emma's career, she'd been promoted to office manager. Ryan's business ventures, Michael had given him responsibility over the property management division. And their future. "Emma," Ryan said as dessert arrived, "these past few months have been the best of my life. Watching you be a mother, building this life together, it's everything I didn't know I wanted." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Emma, I know we've only been officially together for a few months. I know some people might say it's too soon, but I also know I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Emma's breath caught. "Emma, will you marry me? Will you let me be Grace's father, not biologically, but in every way that matters? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the grace you've shown me?" Emma looked at this man who had transformed from her worst critic into her greatest supporter. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the betrayal, the fear, the running, and how all of it had led her to exactly where she was supposed to be. "Yes," Emma said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause from nearby diners who had been watching. Ryan slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and Emma felt her heart overflow with joy. 6 months later, on a beautiful autumn day, Emma and Ryan got married in the garden of the Harrison estate. Grace, now 9 months old, was the flower girl, with Michael's help, since she couldn't walk yet. Michael was Ryan's best man, and Patricia was Emma's maid of honor. As Emma walked down the aisle, in a simple white dress, her hand on Ryan's arm, she looked out at the small gathering of friends and family. Katie was there too. She'd testified against Marcus, who was now serving 5 years in prison. Emma had chosen to forgive her former friend, understanding that people could change and deserved second chances. Emma's mother had made the trip from Tennessee, tears of joy streaming down her face. She'd been so worried when Emma first went to Atlanta, and that worry had turned to terror when Emma disappeared for those terrible months. But now, seeing her daughter happy, safe, and loved, she knew it had all worked out the way it was meant to. As the minister pronounced Ryan and Emma husband and wife, Ryan leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for running into my car that day." Emma laughed through her tears. "Thank you for almost hitting me." They kissed, and their small audience cheered. Grace babbled happily from Michael's arms. That evening, as the sun set over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Emma stood with her husband and daughter, looking out at the city that once terrified her. She thought about that desperate girl who had run barefoot down these streets, pregnant and alone, with nowhere to go. She thought about how one moment, one near accident, had changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" asked Ryan, wrapping his arm around her. "How far we've come," Emma said softly. "All of us." She looked at Ryan, who had transformed from a reckless, angry young man into a devoted husband and father. She looked at Michael, who had learned to let go of control and trust in love. She looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully in her stroller, a baby who would grow up surrounded by love and opportunity. And she looked at herself, no longer a lost girl from Tennessee, but a woman who had found her strength, her purpose, her home. "I came to Atlanta looking for a dream," Emma said, her hand finding Ryan's. "I thought the dream was a job, money, independence." She smiled, but the real dream was family. People who stand by you, people who see you at your worst and choose to stay, people who love you not for what you can give them, but for who you are. Ryan kissed the top of her head. "We're the lucky ones, Emma. You gave us more than we ever gave you." As the last rays of sunlight faded and the stars began to appear, Emma felt complete. Her journey had been terrifying, heartbreaking, and difficult, but it had led her here, to this moment, this family, this life. She was no longer running. She was home.